Good afternoon. This is the time and place for the Legal and Finance Committee meeting in Council Chambers, 12:30, August 30, 2023, and we'll begin with roll call and determination of quorum.
Here. Maher. Here. Sechrist. Here. Roseland.
Here.
Stroman.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Next item is adoption of the agenda, and we have one item to add to the agenda. And I'd call upon either the city attorney or the public works director to tell us what that item is briefly before we discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put in front of you up there an easement document. So I would request that an item be added to the agenda titled Authorize Mayor and Finance Director to sign an easement document allowing Black Hills Power Incorporated to construct, operate, and maintain an underground electric power line on the city soccer property located on North Elkvale Road.
Okay, Director Check, would it be okay with you if we added that as item 12 and it would fall under Public Works, and then we'll address that later?
Yes, sir, that would be fine. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda with that addition? Motion by Roseland, second by Sechrist to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carries. And now it's time for general public comment. I don't have any speaker request forms here. There are none. So I'm going to close general public comment and move to consent items 1 through 7 and open public comment on items 1 through 7. And again, I have no speaker request form, so I'm going to close public comment on consent items 1 through 7. Next item, I guess, is we'll go through first of all, is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 16th?
Second.
Motion by Maher, second by Sechrist to approve the minutes of August 16th. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So now we will go to the Finance Department for a discussion of items 2 through 9. Director Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The second item is for the approval of a recommendation for funding $378,930 from the CDBG program for the Knollwood Drainage Redevelopment. That's going to be a new park. Our CDBG program has been working cooperatively with the police department as well as the parks department to try to include several safety enhancements of that. And so those funds are available, and it has been recommended that that would be approved. The next one is some cleanup assessments. All of those assessments are less than $900. Item 4 is a June sales tax report. For the 2% sales tax month over month, it was up 0.06%, so really just flat compared to June of 2022. Year over year, we are up 2.17%, so up very slightly. However, the good news is we actually had budgeted about a 1.3% reduction, so we are doing better than what we had anticipated. As of the end of June, we usually are at about 41% of total collections, and so almost at half, not quite. In the BBB, which is the sales tax, or the tourism sales tax, month over month, we are up 3.9%, so it was a very strong month for tourism sales. Year over year, we are up 3.6%, so tourism so far has been doing better than just general sales tax. We had budgeted, though, a 5.1% increase, so we are still trending a little lower than what we had anticipated for the year. And as of the end of June, we are usually at 47% of total annual collections, so almost at 50%. Then the last item is in regards to the Mary Hall Park. It is a request for a resolution that would allow us to put in a grant application for the South Dakota Department of Transportation. The total project for that trail would be just over $1 million. It's $1,075,000. The grant from the South Dakota Department of Transportation would be $881,607. The city match would be $194,179. And again, Jamie with our grants division has been working cooperatively with the Parks Department on that grant application. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ainsley. If there are no questions, we'll move on to community development for consent items 6 and 7. Director Fisher.
Turn this, thank you. I assume y'all heard that though, correct? Thank you. The next item that's on the agenda is a correction to a resolution. You may recall that earlier this month, the council approved a resolution to bring in the waiver of building permit fees for affordable housing. What we realized as a part of that resolution is that we didn't have any ineligible expenses or organizations that couldn't be met, and we wanted to get that cleared up. So that is just a slight revision. Everything else within the resolution stays the same. Sarah Hansel worked on that, and she's in the audience if you've got more questions.
Thank you, Director Fisher. So does the council have any questions or wish to pull any of the consent items, or can I get a motion on consent items 2 through 7? Motion by Bieberdorf, second by Roseland to approve items 2 through 7. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That's the end of the consent calendar, and now we move on to non-consent items. And number 8 on the non-consent item will be from community development, so we'll go back to Director Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an ordinance amendment that would introduce an indoor shooting range within our zoning regulations. Currently, Rapid City only allows the police department to have an indoor shooting range within the public district. And so in recent years, we've had numerous requests from different organizations that have wanted to come forward and bring forward a shooting range within the city limits, not only for entertainment, but also to ensure that people are getting proper gun training that would be needed. Those that currently are trying to get their range activity in have to go outside of our community. Beretta is an area that probably many of you are accustomed to. That isn't always the safest of environments. So we did visit with the chief of police to make sure that this aligned with his ideas of appropriate activities within the city limit. We got a thumbs up from him. And so we brought this forward, trying to make this as simple as we could. If we write a good ordinance that says, here's the operational and design features of every indoor shooting range, a big review across many communities, and we landed on requiring those development standards within the range itself to protect those that are within the facility and those that are around it. We did want to take into account, though, that where should they be located? We wanted to make sure they were in districts such as general commercial, light industrial, and the public district. No other districts would be permitted if they meet all of the design standards that are set forward, and they're outside of 250 feet from a school, a child care center, a church, a public park, or a property zoned residential. then it's just coming in for a building permit. If they're within that distance, then it would require a conditional use permit so that we have that public hearing and we make sure that these indoor shooting ranges are designed in such a fashion that they're addressing that use that would otherwise attract children and families, and that the design of that is ensuring that access points and screening are in place between those uses and the indoor shooting range. It went through Planning Commission. There was some great discussion at that level. They did recommend approval. Those that are in the industry that are looking to come to Rapid City have looked at our ordinance, and we've gotten support from them too. So with that, we are requesting that you support this ordinance amendment and that it'll go forward to City Council.
Thank you, Director Fisher. I just need to back up procedurally for 1 minute. I did not open public comment on the non-consent items, but I have no speaker request form, so I'm going to close public comment on the non-consent items. And now ask the council if they have any questions for Director Fisher on item number 8. Seeing none, then I have a question for the city attorney. This being the first reading of ordinance number 6586, do I need to read that entire 8 pages? Okay, thank you. Okay. There's a motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Roseland to approve the first reading of ordinance 6586, an ordinance to amend, to create regulations for indoor shooting ranges by amending Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we'll go to the city attorney's office for non-consent items 9 and 10.
Mr. Chair, I'll take the first one.
Okay.
Okay, so Kinsley Grote from the City Attorney's Office. You just heard about the change to Rapid City Municipal Code that we want to make for Title 17 dealing with zoning and the indoor shooting ranges. This ordinance is one that basically is in conjunction with that one, but it deals with Title 9 instead. There's a section that's in Title 9, it's 9.28.050 that deals with discharging firearms within the city limits. And so we wanted to clean up this section of the code to show that indoor shooting range discharge would be absolutely okay, and also to clean up some language that's in there that needed to be cleaned up in terms of law enforcement and people that are allowed to, like situations where people are allowed to discharge firearms in the city.
Okay. Thank you, Kinsley. Does anybody have any comments on number 9? Any questions? I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciate the city attorney's office going through the ordinances and making sure that they cooperate with each other so we don't have a prohibition against discharge in one ordinance that would be contrary to what we have in another ordinance. And so I appreciate the consistency and your making the effort to make those things make sense. So, next item is number 10. Will that be Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really just a cleanup ordinance as well. It was brought to our attention that we had an ordinance that had some rules regarding use of school property that weren't even consistent with the school's rules. In many cases, they encourage people to use their properties outside of school hours. And then looking through it, a lot of the activities that were prohibited are already, it's kind of duplicative of other ordinances and other statutes that prohibit a lot of this conduct. So we determined it wasn't necessary and are asking to repeal it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Landine? We'll go to Kevin Maher.
I have a question, and maybe it's the school rules, but do I understand this to mean that the school does not allow people to, like if Southwest Middle School kids couldn't go on Sunday afternoon and use the football field to play?
No, it's actually the opposite. They do allow that, but our
Okay.
ordinance would not because it prohibits. So I can't imagine we would enforce it. But yeah, that was kind of the issue that was identified. Is our ordinance was more restrictive on the use of their property than their policies were, and we do in fact encourage kids to use the playground, and the school does as well outside of school hours. So. In fact, I think we may have partnered with them on some playground equipment and things to use it as kind of a neighborhood park. So that's why we're seeking to repeal the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then can I get a motion on 9 and 10?
Motion to approve?
A motion by Sechrist and second by Maher to approve 9 and 10. All in favor? Motion carries. Next item, we'll go to the Public Works Department for non-consent item number 11. Acknowledge presentation of GGC and Rapid City Solid Waste Division Alternative Fuel Investigation. And go to Assistant Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council members, we are going to provide a presentation to you today and to show you some efforts that we have been working on for a very long time. We wanted to present that to you in this format today and not at council, simply because this is a new program. Well, not new, but the legwork is new to us. It's very exciting, but we wanted to offer you some time to ask questions if you had any, so it's a little more informal environment. So it is, like you said, just an acknowledgement. What we are going to talk about today is alternative fuels, is a project that we're working on. And we're also going to talk about something that you may not be familiar with. I know I wasn't, and that's something called clinkers. And we will pass that around so you can take a look at it, but that is pretty significant to our discussion today. We also have a team with us. We will introduce them. We have Mark Truesdale from GCC. We have Luke Rodig from Burns and McDonald. You may remember him from our master plan for solid waste, or solid waste master plan. So he's come here in this environment and briefed you before. We also have Jeff Barber, who is our solid waste superintendent, which I know you have met with him and the tours that he has provided to you out there at solid waste. We have Stacy Titus, assistant public works director. And like you said, I'm Kristen Haase. I'm also the assistant public works director. The purpose of this presentation, again, is to detail our work so far in exploring alternative fuels. This is, again, with regards to the solid waste division. We were also wanting to introduce our partnership, so the city's partnership with GCC, as this is definitely a joint effort between all of us. The goal of this program itself is to come up with a pathway to minimize or divert the amount of material that is currently being landfilled, and you will hear us talk about diversion or to divert many times through this presentation. And again, that is to minimize the amount of that material that you normally just throw away, minimize that amount that goes into the landfill. Obviously, we want to do this as fiscally responsible as we can, so that is another goal of this program. To give you some background, GCC and the city have entered into an NDA. You may remember that coming across as well a few weeks ago. So we have been working together since then, but this has been a long-going project. Many, many years we have worked with GCC in different areas to try to get this program pushed through and get some motivation behind it. We are trying to identify the technology. This is highly technical environment, so that's why it has taken many years to come this far. There are also some challenges operationally, and we will, as we progress, we will bring those forward as well. We are now ready to bring forward some information to you, so I will introduce Mark, and he will have some discussions for you from the GCC perspective.
Thanks, Kristen. Mr. Chairman, council members, thank you for giving us some time here today. I appreciate that. As Kristen mentioned, we're going to talk about some alternate fuels. The other half, actually the front half of that equation, is the material for those fuels, which GCC, we intend to produce those fuels from materials at your landfill. We'll jump right in. I know we are on a limited time schedule. We'll jump right into the presentation so we can allow some good time for questions afterwards. So I want to talk just a little bit about a quick introduction of who is GCC and our division, Colorado Energy Recyclers. They are our fuel experts, basically. I want to go over what does GCC do. Many of you may have heard the name GCC here in town. We are the local cement plant, one of our many cement plants, but right here in Rapid. And then we'll talk about the landfill diversion project itself, give some details in that, and then talk about what our next steps are in order to make this a reality. So our facility here in Rapid City, GCC purchased that facility back in 2001. We are one of the largest employers in the region with over 110 full-time employees. We produce 3 different types of cement, pumping out almost 4,000 tons a day of finished product. In addition to our regular employees, this alternate fuel program, which I'm spearheading here for this facility, as our other 5 facilities in the U.S., we have already brought on an additional 3 full-time, well-paid, full-benefit employees to support that program on the side of the cement plant. We would expect to bring on an additional 4 to 8 employees as this program grows. As I mentioned, our division, Colorado Energy Recyclers, it's a separate company set up underneath the GCC family, and their purpose is primarily to provide alternate fuels to the cement plant. What does that mean? That means it's my job to replace the fossil fuel being consumed in the cement plants with different types of biomass, carbon neutral fuels, et cetera, lower cost fuels, sustainable, et cetera. GCC's been working with CER for the last 8 years when they purchased a scrap tire monofill that was full of tires. It's no longer full of tires. I've emptied it, cleaned it, and now we just received our closure letter from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. So we have some good, successful track records. We want to bring that right here to the city. And outside the United States, we work at our facilities throughout the state of Chihuahua, Mexico, in Juarez, Samalayuca, as well as Chihuahua. And then we have 4 other plants right here in the United States. I'm going to kind of flip-flop topics here just a minute, and I want to talk just a second about those 2 notes at the bottom that talk about processing. When I say processing, I'm referring to taking these raw materials and size reducing them, taking out contamination and blending them so that they make me a good fuel product, an on-specification fuel that will effectively combust the same as coal. So that is the processing component of it. When I talk about co-processing, that's the receiving end at the kiln. And by co-processing, they mean that they're going to consume that material, they're going to absorb that energy value of the material itself by burning it. And the co-processing component also includes all the residual ash. Anytime you combust something, you're going to create that energy and heat, which we use to make our cement product, and you'll have a residual ash component. The unique thing about us using a cement kiln is that ash component is a calculated percent of our finished product. There is no waste. When I take in a pound of waste, or I take a pound of waste, I make it into a pound of fuel, I'm going to consume that either as energy or as a raw material in my finished product. Nothing from my process will go back to the landfill. And that is probably one of the big key benefits of this. It's essentially a A hole in the ground you can never fill, right? So what exactly does a cement plant do? We'll run through this here. First and foremost, I think, to put this right in people's mind, that bottom left-hand fun fact, cement is to concrete what flour is to a cake. We make the binding agent, right? So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, and we'll start in the top left-hand corner of that diagram. And let's see if we can point up there. Hey, look at that. All right, so these are our raw materials, which are mined mostly locally here: limestone, silica, iron, alumina, different types of ore. We get those from different types of quarries and mines locally. We're going to go through and we're going to pulverize that material and crush it. Begin homogenizing and storing it, and we separate out, our different iron and alumina sources or silica, so we can blend that in based on the type of cement that we're making, whatever the recipe is. Those raw materials go into our raw mill, and I'm going to take rock that I've taken out of the quarries, and I'm going to turn that into effectively like talcum powder, like a dust. And that mixed dust then will go to the top of my preheater, if you want to, it's following along this little green line here. Those materials are going to the top of the preheater, and it is exactly that. It's there to preheat these materials. As that pulverized rock dust circles down through the cyclones, it is slowly being heated. You can see we have energy and fuel inputs in the preheater, pre-calciner tower. So I'm going to start with an ambient temperature rock, and at the bottom of that tower, it's going to be about 15 to 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're getting there, not quite, but we're getting there, and we're going to continue injecting fuels. We're going to flip-flop back and talk about that in a minute as well. But that rock is going to come down into the beginning of that cement kiln itself. And it is the tumbling action and the slight angle of that kiln that allows those materials to roll effectively towards the main burner. By the time it hits the middle of that kiln, it's what we call the calcining zone, the clinkering zone, and essentially we melt rock for a living. If you look in the middle of that kiln, it's molten lava, is exactly what it looks like. It is the heat from this process that allows all these minerals to chemically recombine. And that tumbling action of the kiln recombines those minerals, and what falls out the end of the clinker is what you're seeing right now, or what falls out the end of the kiln is called clinker. And that is actually what a cement kiln makes. That is our one and only product that comes out of the end of that. They're small, round, gray balls. We have recombined those materials. We're going to take that, we put it into our appropriately called clinker storage. Don't ask me why they call it clinker. Almost 18 years and I still don't have an answer. But that's the name they chose to give it. So we take that clinker, we are going to, again, run it through some mills and pulverize it back into a dust. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of gypsum or some other type of admixture, and then you and I are going to pick that up at Home Depot, and we call that Portland cement, right? So that is really the ultimate finished product that goes out of the plant, depending on the blend, what that final blend is. It could be a type 1 cement, it could be a type 2 cement, it could be an oil well cement, it could be cement for runways for a 747 to land on, it could be a sidewalk. There are literally tens of thousands of recipes for that final product. But the key component, and where the city comes in and plays a key role in all of this, ordinarily these programs for me, I would source this from industry and just take industrial scrap. Out east, I mean, literally thousands and thousands of manufacturers. We don't have that luxury here in the western part of the state. The source of the materials, in my assessment, is from the city itself. And they're not odd materials. I mean, we talk about some components of the municipal solid waste stream, components from construction and demolition companies that work all over town, non-recyclable materials. things that Jeff and his team down at the MRF, the material recycling facility, that they can't recover, or more often than not, there is no economical solution. The outlet to recycle it is so far away, it costs more to send it to recycling than it does to landfill. And that's an unfortunate but common problem. All of these materials that don't have a viable outlet are the ones that we are going to look at and focus on to produce our alternate fuels. And again, the 1 pound of fuel that goes in to the different locations in this kiln, where we put this right into the preheater, pre-calciner here, any of that material is going to be thoroughly combusted. Any of the ash product that is generated ends up right here in our bags of finished product and is sold. That is the key difference between a cement processing facility and any other type of waste processing, incinerators or anything. So we'll keep that kind of in the back of our mind, and let's talk a little bit about the actual diversion of these materials themselves. Like Kristen alluded to, this is something we have been working on. We've pulled out over 5,000 tons of material to date from the landfill. What we are looking at now is a significant expansion of that program to be able to produce much, much larger quantities, exponential more quantities. And we want to produce better quality. At the end of the day, our bridges and roads all need to be able to be made of quality cement products. So the plant they don't have the luxury of reducing the quality. So the onus is on us then to produce the better fuels, right? We're putting together and preparing an MOU that kind of splits up who's going to do what. How are we going to source the materials? How are they going to be processed? And we're in the process of going through all that right now. And out of that MOU, we also identified a couple of the main goals for each one of us on the team. From the city side, absolutely. Every ton of material that I can divert from the landfill is, 2.5 cubic yards or 2 cubic yards of airspace that's saved. Diverting that same ton also prolongs the life of that landfill. And the key behind all of this is we have to manage these materials properly so that we are cost effective in doing so. We have to handle some of these materials a little bit differently than we're doing today. These are challenging materials for the landfill to manage. Think of your bulky item collection with couches and chairs, construction, where they knock down an entire wall, these giant items that need to be ground up, shred, and made small so we can compact them. They're challenging materials for the landfill to manage and put into the landfill. But these are also the exact same materials that I want to divert and send to the cement plant. On the GCC side, right here locally in town, yes, we want to reduce our air emissions. We want to reduce our impact to the environment. And yes, this is going to reduce our fuel cost. We are a for-profit company, and I need to justify my own existence, right, if I'm going to be honest. I want to reduce our fossil fuel consumption. We have some very serious sustainability targets between now and 2030. This would be a significant step in the right direction. And finally, if I can secure a local source of material where I can make my fuel and have a dual benefit from the supply side, that's a win-win. We bank probably comparable to your city master plan of 20 to 30 years out. Our master plans are usually 50 to 100 years. Those are how long we would amortize those kilns. So there's some really good goals, and we got a lot of really decent traction on this. And again, I'm just happy to be able to sit here and present the work to you. We're working on the scope of the whole project, and I want to turn this back over to Luke, your consultant for the city, to kind of run through the scope a little bit. Okay, here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon. Luke Rodig with Burns & McDonnell. As Kristen mentioned in the introduction, our team's been heavily involved in the city's solid waste master plan project, which has been in development for several years. So I'm involved in this program to really take a comprehensive look at all the different impacts that diverting the material will have. So as part of this evaluation, we're looking at calculating that airspace, landfill airspace savings, and quantifying that, as well as looking at the landfill disposal cost savings, and then comparing that to the potential operational adjustments for separating these materials out from the waste stream and delivering them to the GCC process, as well as comparing them to the processing costs that GCC will have. So that's our role on this project. And just to reiterate the goals that Mark laid out, the collective goal is to divert materials landfilled by creating a cleaner burning fuel from high heat value materials segregated from the routine waste and recyclables collection. So we will jump right into the evaluation. We're in the beginning stages of that now. As Mark and Kristen laid out, there has been work done in previous years that's primarily been on the yard waste side and diverting yard waste materials. And now we're really looking at expanding that to these other raw materials, the municipal solid waste, construction and demolition debris, and other items to really enhance this program. So after the evaluation, our team will come back to you all and present the outcomes and recommendations. And once those recommendations have buy-in and support, we'd be going forward with preparing a public outreach and media messaging plan, and I'll discuss that a little bit on the next slide. So, depending on the outcomes of the evaluation and the recommendations going forward, your stakeholders, council members, residents, businesses may have some questions. So, what is this going to cost the residents? What are the benefits? What are the implications from a environment and health and safety standpoint? Our goal is to, based on results of the evaluation, have all of those questions answered and be able to communicate that out to the public in a unified and understandable way early in the process, and just have a consistent messaging out as early on as possible. So there's a number of ways to do that. The city's public works department's very familiar with all those potential communication tools listed on the slide there. So there's fact sheets, there's media postings, workshops, public open house meetings, as well as the council meetings and briefing the public there. So those are just opportunities going forward to get the messaging out. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to just summarize these first couple of bullets, and then Kristen will wrap up with the final summary of next steps forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke. So what are we doing next? We started the program in 2020. We had some initial challenges, and then was able to bring that back on board this year. And we, like I mentioned, put out over 5,000 tons of what we pulled out of the yard waste program here this year. And we want to expand that. Our next step is really to hash out the details with the DPW here so we can bring the MOU to the council for their consideration. That'll actually itemize who's going to do what components of making this whole project work. So the council should probably expect to see something like that coming up in the near future. I think our next big step, we are actually at a point where we need a deep dive into the waste, no pun intended. because unfortunately that's where I end up most of the times. But we need to do a full evaluation of all your materials here. And then I will take that evaluation and that will go to US EPA as well as the South Dakota Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources for their approval. None of this happens without their approval first. Just so we're clear on that, we have an entire environmental team on our own that is working on all the permits to make these things happen. So US EPA and local will need to approve this as before we get started, really. The next step is really, again, working with the municipality here to split up what is that capital requirement, who's going to spend what, and which components are we going to process, which steps are we going to do. A lot of detail, but the big one there is probably on the capital involvement side. And GCC is going to be bringing their checkbook to the table to make this happen. Defining the process, location, and methodology, we're still looking. We're still looking for the best place to do this and the best way to do this. And we need a little bit more research and time, and working with the staff from sanitation is the way we're going to do that. And finally, just defining those final costs and identifying where the funding is going to come from. Is it going to come from tipping fees? Is it going to come from GCC? Those are all still much in early negotiations. And that's about all I have on here. Where's Kristen at here? We'll let Kristen pick up and take the last couple ones. Try not to keep everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, we are always trying to keep you involved in this process. So our next one on that list is council briefing and proposed recommendations. There will be some decisions that we have to make, and we are well aware that we need to keep you in the loop on those things. The next one, again, is your identify your known risks and developing a mitigation plan. That is your SWOT analysis. That is basically what I do daily. So we need to identify those strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to this plan. And again, being fiscally responsible, that is going to be one of our biggest challenges that we will face in this project. So we will very much keep an eye on that. We've also talked about, or Luke talked about, the outreach and media messaging. That is something that we continuously work on daily. So we will look for unique opportunities. This program will take every resident here in Rapid City to be able to make this a success. So that is why we were here today talking with you. This is not something that Public Works can do on its own. It's going to take all the residents of Rapid City. And then we're going to talk about the beginning of the implementation phase. That's a big word for what we do in program planning. How are we going to do this? So that's that implementation phase. And it has been my challenge to make this as phased or steps. So we have opportunities to test things, and if it doesn't work, then we can go back and make adjustments. So we're not just going to throw this all in one day. We're going to start this process. We really have to work through the implementation phase to make sure that it just doesn't falter. That's all we have. We will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Mark and Luke and Kristen. Any of the members of the council have questions or comments for any of the presenters? We'll go to Josh Bieberdorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the questions I got already was, number one, I love the idea, I'm excited about it, was air quality. So are you saying that in order for the air quality, the things that we burn is going to be through the federal EPA to get clearance for that? Or how do I answer that question?
As far as emissions from the facility, yeah, we're currently regulated under US EPA as well as our local state permit that follows EPA. The materials that we are going to combust are effectively tested, and we do literally a one-to-one comparison between our fuel and the fossil fuels that would ordinarily be consumed at the facility. The results on that continually show that we will emit less particulate matter, lower CO, in addition to having a biomass or carbon neutral component we'll also be able to net out much of our emissions as a carbon neutral biomass. So effectively, we do whatever we can to reduce the amount of emissions going into the atmosphere here.
So when you're burning all the nasty stuff in the landfill, it's the same as your carbon footprint, what you're currently burning, or even less?
It's less. Yeah, when we talk about your water bottle that you drink out of, and maybe that's a bad example because we like to recycle those, but you know, the grocery bag that nobody wants from the grocery store, that's made from natural gas and highly refined petroleum products. So it's going to burn much cleaner and much hotter than any fossil fuel that we could ever come across. Save natural gas, of course.
Thanks.
Right.
Go to Kevin Maher.
Just to simplify it for me, if you're, say you're burning wood today, right, from logs and trees, branches and stuff, how do you get that in a format to burn so that it's clean? I mean, do you transport it out to your facility and then burn it there?
Yes. The kiln has the ability to consume a huge variety of materials. As long as I deliver consistent materials, they can be extremely high quality or low quality, like our own fossil fuel. The very short answer there is yes, we will grind and size reduce all of the materials, and then we usually like to have an additional step after that so that I can eliminate the undersized sand and gravel, eliminate the oversized pieces that don't get sized properly, so I can send the plant a consistent sized product. But it's all ground up, all size reduced, and then the engineered fuel that we would produce from the other municipal stream, fairly comparable. We'll size reduce the materials, we will blend them together, and they will be blended into a percentage that is going to combust comparably to my fossil fuels.
Okay, one more question. So if you're, imagine this old couch, would it get ground up at the landfill, and how do you get the metal out of there?
Yes, that's the beauty of like the bulky items. They are a huge nuisance for the landfill on the collection side. Absolutely. I'll run that through a series of size reduction steps, primary shredding, secondary shredding. We'll run it across magnets to pull out all the steel. We'll run it across an eddy current to pull out aluminum components. And it's a hot mix of materials.
Okay,
and that just increases the amount of recycling that the city gets.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So how do you generate the immense heat in that kiln and still come out with a net energy or net fuel at the end? Am I not, this whole concept, you have to use a lot of energy to create more energy? Is that what you're doing?
We're using today if we take the alternate fuel out, let's just call it fuel, whether it's fossil fuel or wood-derived fuels. Yes, we have a massive need to produce the energy and heat. The main burner in that kiln usually hovers just below 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And we need that temperature in order to melt the rock. And it's the temperature, like I mentioned, that allows those components to chemically recombine to produce our favorite product, clinker. So it's the energy is being consumed in there, and it's the energy that allows that chemical reaction to occur. That happens in the middle of the kiln. That gas flow coming out of the kiln, that is actually used to preheat the pulverized rock coming into the system.
Okay. Thank you. Two more questions.
Yeah.
All the rubber that you recycled or reused, is that in some athletic field somewhere in the country, or where does that end up?
Cement kilns love tires.
Oh, okay.
I will take tires and put those into my facility all day long. Super high heat value, readily available in all markets. They don't get wet when I leave them outside, and they don't blow away.
Okay,
So yes, I want all your tires.
okay, great. Last thing, in your little teaser at the beginning, you said that we would know what the number one product by weight sold on the planet is, because concrete was number two?
Water.
Oh, okay.
Water is the only thing sold more than concrete on the planet.
Thank you.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah,
Right?
it's extremely interesting. Everything you guys have brought forth today is just kind of mind-boggling for me anyway. I'll go to Lindsay Sechrist.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Mark and Luke for your willingness to partner with the city in this effort. I think it's really worthwhile, and I'm excited to see what the outcomes are and what your recommendations are as you continue to evaluate this. I am curious, do we have any just preliminary estimates on what amount of diversion this might benefit the city with, or extension of the landfill, or any of those, or is that all data that will just be formulated along the way?
I think everybody here would prefer to try to save that until we really complete our evaluation. We don't want to set any unrealistic expectations.
Well, the process.
Would you answer that differently, Luke? I mean, the approach, like Kristen had mentioned, it's going to be a phased approach. We took out 5,000 this year. If I can take out 10 or 15,000 next year, and next year, and next year, and next year, increase those volumes, that's how this program's going to build. It's like any recycling thing. It's not a single thing. It's not going to be one step and happen overnight. This program will develop over multiple years.
Well, I'm excited to see the municipal solid waste materials as part of the process, and that could divert some of those non-recyclables. So thank you again. Appreciate the update and look forward to finding or learning more as you have more information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to acknowledge the presentation? Motion by Beaverdorf, second by Segrist, to acknowledge the presentation of GGC and Rapid City Solid Waste Division Alternative Fuel Investigation. All in favor? Okay. Motion carries. Last item on non-consent will be item number 12, and we'll go to Public Works Department, Director Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put a document in front of you today. It's basically a city standard easement agreement. This is kind of time sensitive. That's why we walked it on to today's agenda. But this easement is similar in nature to what we work out with Black Hills Power on a regular basis. In fact, yesterday at Public Works, we had a very similar easement that went through the process. And you've seen many before in the past. In a nutshell, what it boils down to is this is the city granting an 8-foot wide easement for Black Hills Power Incorporated to extend power north of town across the city soccer property 2 points northward. So this is a fairly typical thing that we work out with them. The Parks Department, Public Works, as well as City Legal were involved in this process, so everyone's on board with it. Anyway, we're requesting the approval of this so we can keep Black Hills Power in business.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Any questions from council? Can I get a motion to approve the easement? Motion by Maher, second by Roseland, to approve the easement. All in favor? Motion carries, and that concludes the non-consent items on the agenda. Next item is Alderman items. Does anyone have anything they need to bring up today? If not, can we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Beaverdorf, second by Segrist. All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. This is just, well, and then, and all the energy you have to generate to make all that stuff burn, it still comes out as a positive in the end. I mean,
I guess because fossil fuel emission must be higher.
Because
Yeah.
when you see tires burning, it's usually this black smoke.
Yeah.